In my previous life, the strange ring I stumbled upon was snatched away by my stepsister, Jessica. After she took it, she quietly liquidated all of our family's assets, using the money to hoard an immense amount of supplies. When her funds eventually dried up, she pressured me into getting a summer job just so I could pay my own university tuition. I never could have guessed that only 3 days after I started, a catastrophic high temperature apocalypse would descend upon the world. While my stepsister and her family indulged in food and drink, living in relative comfort, I was the one they cast out, left to perish in the merciless, scorching sun. Now, having been reborn, I found myself standing face to face with Jessica again, as she asked to trade for the very same ring. "That ring is pretty neat," she said, a sly grin spreading across her face. "How about I trade you some snacks for it?" She pulled a bag of potato chips from her personal stash of treats and held it out. "You love these things, don't you? Here." I clenched my fists, my breath catching in my throat. A ghost of the searing heat from my death still clung to my skin, a phantom burn that refused to fade. From her comfortable spot on the sofa, my stepmother glanced over, her voice a casual drone. "Anna, honey, don't take this the wrong way, but you're pushing 155 pounds. You should probably lay off the junk food or you'll never find a boy who likes you." "I'm not interested in dating anyway," I replied, my voice firm. "But thank you for the advice. I don't want these." I pushed the bag of chips out of Jessica's hand and walked directly back to my cramped makeshift room on the balcony. Our family lived in a 1,000 square foot, two-bedroom apartment, but there had never truly been a place for me. 5 years ago, my father had told me that Jessica was younger, and that I, as the older sister, should always let her have her way. With that single justification, he gave my bedroom to her and moved all of my possessions into a small corner of the balcony. Even that wasn't enough for my stepmother, who would often complain, "Ugh, it's so hard to hang the laundry with all this stuff in the way. Can't we find another spot for Anna's things?" In the past, I would have looked to my father with tears welling in my eyes, but he would always avoid my gaze, muttering the same tired excuse. "It's fine. She's the older sister. She should give in." The very next day, the small space I occupied on the balcony would shrink even further to accommodate more lines for the family's laundry. My small bed was now so crowded that I couldn't sleep properly, forced to curl into a tight ball every night. Fighting back the familiar sting of tears, I whispered to myself, "Soon. The world ends in 3 days. This time, none of you will live so comfortably." I locked the sliding glass door to the balcony, raised my hand to my mouth, and bit down on my finger, drawing a small bead of blood. I let the drop fall onto the surface of the ring, intending to claim it as my own. It was a common trope in the novels I read, but to my astonishment, it actually worked. The blood was instantly absorbed by the jet black ring, which then vanished from my finger. I had to suppress a shout of pure elation. Focusing my thoughts, I pictured the pillow on my bed. I thought silently, "In." The pillow vanished from sight. I thought again, "Out." It reappeared exactly where I was looking. The success of reclaiming my space sent a flush of excitement through me. But my joy was short-lived. When I checked my bank account and saw I only had double digits in cash, my heart sank. As a university student home for the summer, my savings consisted of the meager amount left over from my allowance. My monthly living expenses were $800, and I had to be incredibly frugal just to save a few dozen. If my roommates invited me out, even that small amount would disappear. It made me wonder, how on earth did Jessica manage to sell off our entire family's assets in my past life? "Anna, haven't I always told you to let your sister have what she wants?" A voice, both familiar and distant, came from the other side of the balcony door. My father. I remained silent. "It's just a ring. If your sister wants it, you should just give it to her." I gripped the bedsheet until my knuckles turned white, desperately wanting to scream at him. Why? Jessica isn't my real sister. Has she ever, even once, treated me like one? In my past life, I would have shouted these questions in anguish. But not in this life. None of these people were worth my energy. Seeing that I wasn't going to respond, my father let out a heavy, disappointed sigh. The next morning, Jessica called me for breakfast. Throughout the entire meal, she couldn't stop staring at the ring on my finger. I pretended not to see her, deliberately ignoring her expectant gazes. Halfway through breakfast, her patience finally wore thin. Sis, that ring looks just like one an anime character I love wears. How about I give you $100 for it? I just shook my head, concentrating on eating my food. In 2 more days, a hot meal like this would be a rare luxury. Jessica bit her lip and threw a desperate look at her mother. My stepmother immediately launched into a lecture, though it was aimed at my father. Jessica, before we became a new family, I told you to be obedient and sensible, and never to ask for your sister's things. The moment she said that, my father's expression darkened. But she should ask herself, which of my things hasn't her daughter taken? First, it was my room, then my father, and in the end, I was an orphan who still had a family. Anna. Just as my father began to speak, I gathered my bowl and chopsticks and stood up. I went to the kitchen to wash my own dishes. I was acutely aware of this routine. My stepmother disliked doing dishes, especially after I'd used them. She once claimed, "Sorry, Anna, I'm allergic to other people's saliva. The moment I touch it, I feel like I'm going to be sick." After washing up, I made sure to avoid the ring as I dried my hands. This particular ring was a fake I had colored black with a permanent marker. Returning to the living room, my father stopped me. He looked like he wanted to have a serious talk. Anna, has something been on your mind lately? No, I'm just tired, I said. I want to go back and rest. He smiled faintly and pointed toward the balcony. Your aunt is hanging laundry out there. Wait until she's finished before you go in. Why don't you talk with your dad for a bit? He then shifted his position on the sofa, patting the spot next to him for me to sit. The last time he had done this was 5 years ago, right before he told me I had to switch rooms with Jessica. I had been so happy in that moment, thinking he was about to show Jessica that he loved me more. The depth of my joy then was matched only by the crushing heartbreak that followed. Now, he was doing it again. Despite the oppressive 102-degree heat, a shiver ran down my spine and I remained standing. Is there something you need? I asked. My father sighed. Anna, you know the saying, a harmonious family prospers. When you and your sister fight, it makes everyone in the house unhappy. I want to encourage you to let go of your personal feelings, be more level-headed, and show more tolerance. Your sister hasn't really done anything to wrong you, has she? She's young, and she rarely asks for anything like this. If she's wronged you in any way, I'll apologize to you on her behalf, okay? I glanced at the subtle shadow lingering by the doorway and said, You're always telling me to be patient and tolerant. When are you going to talk to her? Tell her to stop coveting other people's things. Always wanting this and that, it's so tacky. Suddenly, a loud crash echoed from the balcony. My father rushed over. Did the bucket fall? I let out a cold, humorless laugh. That sound was clearly my stepmother kicking it over on purpose. The mother and daughter were two of a kind, always eavesdropping. As soon as they came back inside, I squeezed past them onto the balcony and shut the door. To dry the clothes faster, the sunshade had been fully retracted, and the intense heat immediately made me feel breathless. In my previous life, I had died from exposure in this exact brutal environment. By the end, my body was completely dehydrated, my skin as tough and dry as beef jerky. My body seemed to have retained the trauma. Whenever it got too hot, my heart would begin to panic, pounding wildly in my chest. Water. I needed to drink water. I hurried to open the door, pushing past Jessica, who was pretending to just be walking by, and rushed to the kitchen. I drank 3 large bowls of water in quick succession, only stopping when my stomach felt bloated and I thought I might be sick. Looking at the bowl in my hand, my nerves tensed. I have to hoard supplies, and I have to rent a small place with air conditioning. After calming myself, I grabbed the tablet I had bought with money from a summer job. I planned to sell it to get some cash for instant noodles and water. The moment Jessica saw me getting ready to leave, she ran over. Sis, are you going out for a nice meal? Can I come with you? No, I refused coldly. Huh? But I can buy you bubble tea. I'm on a diet. I don't drink that stuff. Well, I stood up abruptly, staring directly into her eyes. Jessica, can't you understand plain English? I've already told you no multiple times. Her eyes widened, full of disbelief that the pushover she had always known could speak to her so sharply. My stepmother and father heard the commotion and rushed out of their room. What's wrong? Why are you fighting with your sister again, Anna? How long are you going to keep throwing this tantrum? Mom, Sis won't let me go play with her, Jessica wailed, bursting into tears. She cried with such dramatic flair I almost wanted to applaud. My father looked at me with profound disappointment. I didn't bother to explain. I just silently took the fake ring off my hand and threw it as hard as I could into the flower bed outside our apartment window. I told them coldly, for the sake of peace in this family, it's better to just get rid of the source of all this trouble. Jessica let out a shriek and immediately lunged towards the window to look down. As I walked past the flower bed on my way out, I could still see her up there, hair disheveled, frantically digging through the dirt like a woman possessed. Go ahead and search, I thought. You'll only feel more desperate when you finally find it. The pawn shop owner gave me $900 for my tablet. With that money and the $45 I had left in my account, my first priority was to rent a place before I started shopping. The ground floor apartments in the old part of the city were dark and damp, but they were cheap. However, you can't guard against the wickedness of people's hearts. A basement would be cool and quiet, but if someone blocked the air vent, you could suffocate. I squatted in a shady spot on the street for several minutes, genuinely unsure where I could possibly find a safe haven. My phone was nearly dead from all the searching when I finally spotted an ad on a local app. A studio apartment, only $1 for the first month with water and electricity included. Most importantly, it came with an air conditioner and a water purifier. I immediately called the agent, eager to move in as quickly as possible. The agent was just as eager to lock in a tenant, and we quickly came to an agreement. We signed a lease with an escalating rent. $1 for the first month, $1,000 for the second, and $2,000 for the third month and beyond. After we both stamped our fingerprints on the contract, our eyes met, and we shared a brief, knowing smile. With the key in hand, I took a bus to the wholesale market to buy various flavors of instant ramen. I couldn't afford the cup noodles, but the bagged ones were a better value anyway. When I arrived and asked about the price, a box containing 24 packs was $40. Eating twice a day, that would last me 4 months. I could use the rest of the money to stock up on water, but then the owner, seeing my hesitation, pointed to a pile of boxes in a corner. Those are nearing their expiration date, he said. They're $10 cheaper. Go have a look. My eyes lit up. I ran over to check the dates. They all had about 30 days left. For me, that wasn't a problem at all, since time doesn't pass inside the storage space. However, I died so early in my previous life that I had no idea how long the apocalypse would actually last. My only option was to hoard as much as I possibly could. I ended up taking 20 boxes of different flavored ramen from the pile. As I was checking out, the owner looked at me with a complicated expression. Young lady, you can't just eat instant noodles all the time. You need to supplement with vitamins. I nodded repeatedly. Sir, you're a good person. But besides ramen, what else could I possibly afford? As I slowly walked out of the market, my phone buzzed incessantly with calls from Jessica. I blocked her number, but she found other ways to contact me. Did you figure out the ring's secret? She messaged. Every time a message came through, I blocked the new number immediately. After all that, my phone battery had dropped by another 5%. At an intersection, a small truck was selling watermelons, the driver shouting, "Local watermelons going cheap, 15 cents a pound." Watermelons that were cheaper than bottled water. I bought his entire stock. I threw in a little extra as a tip, and the seller helped me deliver them, along with the 20 boxes of ramen, to the entrance of my new apartment building. By then, I had less than 50 left. I used it to buy 4 15-liter empty jugs. Taking the elevator up to the 4th floor, I found the hallway was pitch black, without even a motion sensor light. But I quite liked this kind of environment. To avoid revealing my ring's ability, I carried everything up from downstairs to my room, trip by agonizing trip. After storing it all in the space, I looked out through the screen window. The sky was filled with dense, unusually bright stars. These stars weren't romantic at all. They were the true culprits behind the high-temperature apocalypse. They would repeatedly refract and amplify the sun's light onto the earth. This phenomenon was why the temperature on the first day of the apocalypse would climb to a staggering 158 degrees Fahrenheit. It would drop slightly at night, only to rise even higher the next day. Before I died, I had seen on the news that experts predicted it would take at least 3 to 5 months for the temperature to return to a habitable range. During those months, the persistent high temperatures would cause all crops to wither, freshwater resources to evaporate, and people to suffer from food shortages and restricted movement, ultimately leading to social chaos. In the first 3 days alone, hundreds of thousands of people died every day. Splish, splash. The sound of the drinking water overflowing in the kitchen snapped me back to reality. I quickly turned off the tap. Just as I stored the last water jug in the space, my phone, which was charging on the bed, began to ring. It was my father. I didn't answer. He immediately started sending a barrage of voice messages, one long message after another, quickly filling the entire screen. "What have you been doing? Why aren't you answering your phone? It's so late. Why aren't you back yet? Your sister and I are so worried we can't sleep. The whole family is waiting for you. What has gotten into you lately? You've become a completely different person. Who wronged you? Didn't I tell you that a person needs to know when to stop? They're both my daughters, so why is Jessica so well behaved? It's all your dead mother's fault for leaving me with an ungrateful brat like you. If you're not back by 10, don't ever come back. And don't come asking me for tuition or living expenses from now on." The last voice message was the shortest. I listened to it all, see? It was already like this before the apocalypse even began. I took a deep breath, turned on some music, and continued preparing for my survival. I would need a lot more water, so I kept filling various containers with tap water from the sink. Sometime around dawn, I finally fell asleep, curled up in a ball on the floor. Ah! A piercing scream from downstairs shattered the morning peace. I woke with a start and ran barefoot to the window to look. It was a homeless man who often scavenged for trash in the area. He was dead. I couldn't see the details clearly, only the woman who had found the body, so frightened she couldn't stand and was being held up by two people. A small crowd had gathered, pointing and murmuring. I counted about a dozen people, not a large number, likely because the area was mostly filled with low-occupancy rental apartments. 10 minutes later, a police car arrived. The sun came out and the stars faded. The temperature began to climb at a frightening rate of 18 degrees per hour. By 10 o'clock, it was already 140 degrees Fahrenheit. The lush green leaves on the trees were wilting under the sun, looking like they just needed a sprinkle of cumin to be ready to eat. The streets were almost empty of people. With nothing else to do, I scrolled through the news online. Reports declared this the hottest year in recorded history, urging everyone to take precautions. But in some factories without air conditioning, 200,000 people across the country had already suffered from heat stroke and collapsed. At noon, the temperature climbed again to 151 degrees Fahrenheit. The air outside was already distorting under the heat waves, and the indoor air conditioning could no longer cool the room effectively. The trending topic on every platform became high temperature. On a short video app, someone risked their life to live stream frying an egg on a scorching iron plate. In less than 10 seconds, the egg was cooked. And cooked along with the egg was the vlogger, who suddenly collapsed to the ground. The asphalt on the roadside had melted and his feet were stuck. He couldn't move. After struggling for 5 or 6 minutes, he finally fell and died, despite rescue efforts. The high-definition live streaming equipment recorded the entire horrifying scene without censorship. Netizens edited and madly shared the clip, and the first wave of widespread panic began to spread. I immediately swiped away when I saw the follow-up videos, my mind a complete blank. In my last life, I died just like that. Sadly, there wasn't even anyone to collect my body. The streets were littered with people just like me. While I still had an internet connection, I casually scrolled through my social media feed and saw a new post from Jessica. In a short video, my father was stepping on my old bed, climbing along the outside of the balcony to fix the air conditioner in the master bedroom. I looked at the large gray footprints on my bed in the video, then at her caption. Just because Mom said, "It's so hot," Dad braved the high temperature to add more Freon. I'm so envious of a love like this. My hand slipped, and I accidentally liked the post. She must have seen it because she immediately posted another one. In the picture, she was holding the red property deed book and a savings passbook. The caption read, "Now I don't have to be envious of Mom because I have the best dad in the world. Love you." Go ahead, I thought. Let's see how long your love lasts. On the first official day of the apocalypse, the harsh, high temperature environment put everyone on high alert. People began to frantically hoard water and food. The prices of groceries and drinking water in the market skyrocketed with three major price hikes in a single day, and still, supply couldn't meet the overwhelming demand. But at this point, people hadn't yet thought of selling their houses to hoard supplies. I couldn't help but think back to my past life. Jessica only had the courage to sell the house and hoard supplies because she had my space ring. Now that she doesn't have it, how will she cope? Unfortunately, before I could see her post an update, a purchase limit notice was issued by the government. At the same time, an important piece of news came through. An industrial park announced it was halting all operations, and all workers were being sent home on indefinite leave. I glanced at the address and realized my father, David, worked in that exact area. Sure enough, Jessica posted an update at noon. The picture showed the family of three with a spread of 4 dishes and a soup, raising their iced drinks for a toast. The caption, "You used to work to support the family, now it's my turn to support you." Hey, I thought, was a single penny of that money earned by her? I tossed my phone aside and got up to tend to my watermelon seedlings. The day before, I'd cut open a small watermelon and spat the seeds onto a piece of paper, planning to throw them away, but I had forgotten. To my surprise, when I looked today, they had all sprouted. Now, if the internet goes down, at least I won't be too bored. On the third day of the apocalypse, the high temperatures continued unabated. Astronomers and meteorologists had figured out the cause of the heat wave and announced that there would be a long period of high temperatures ahead. They hoped everyone could help each other, live in harmony, and overcome the difficulty together. In addition, local governments successively released videos instructing residents to move to public shelters for safety. The shelters in the videos not only provided a cool environment, but were also equipped with various facilities like free drinking water, emergency medical rooms, exercise areas, and children's play areas. That night, almost everyone in my building left. The sound of car horns downstairs was incessant. In the middle of the night, around 3 a.m., the wind suddenly picked up, and a streak of purple lightning flashed across the sky. Then, a heavy downpour began, gradually extinguishing everyone's desire to leave. I stared blankly at the fierce wind and rain outside the window. I thought to myself, could the apocalypse be over just like this? In my previous life, I had died on the third day during the daytime. I was just shy of making it through. On the fourth day, the sky was already faintly light at 4 a.m. The temperature quickly reached over 104 degrees. The indoor air conditioning couldn't keep the room cool, and I was woken up by the oppressive heat. I habitually opened my phone to check the news and found that last night's rain not only failed to extinguish the fire of the high temperature, but had also caused cracks in the walls of some old buildings due to the sudden increase in humidity, turning them into hazardous structures. On my social media feed, many of my former neighbors and friends posted that their places were no longer livable, and they were preparing to move to the public shelters. After a brief dusk, the night unfolded. In one of my neighbors' posts, I saw the figures of that family of 3. Soon, Jessica posted her latest update. The family's hands were stacked together with her delicate, fair palm pressed in the middle. The caption, "As long as Mom and Dad are by my side, I'm not afraid to go anywhere." 3 hours later, she posted another photo of 2 people holding hands. "Let me introduce everyone. This is my boyfriend." Well, what do you know? She's already started dating. These past few days, my interest in reading novels had waned. I found myself just waiting for her to post updates. 2 days went by in a flash. My watermelon seedlings had even started to flower, but there was still no news from Jessica's side. I temporarily set aside my people-watching hobby and focused on tending to my melons. I searched online and confirmed that no normal melon can go from sprouting to flowering in just 6 days. But then again, since a once-in-a-millennium apocalypse had arrived, what was truly impossible? 2 days later, on the 10th day of the apocalypse, the impossible happened again. The melons were ripe. A watermelon, slightly larger than my fist, had a small crack in its rind, revealing the red flesh inside, as if telling me it was ready. With a heart full of excitement and confusion, I ate half of it. It was sweet, so sweet, incredibly sweet. One vine bore 6 or 7 melons, yielding more liquid than the water I had used to irrigate it. I decided to cultivate more watermelon seeds and start a small plantation in my apartment. On the 11th day, there was one piece of good news and one piece of bad news. The bad news was that not a single drop of water would come out of the faucet anymore. The red line of water conservation had been drawn even tighter. I forced myself to eat half a small watermelon every day to stay hydrated. Besides my instant noodles, I was determined not to touch the drinking water in my storage space. The good news was that the second batch of 20 watermelon seedlings had all sprouted. If I continued to expand the number of plants to sustain myself, I would face a new problem: not enough soil. I took a deep breath, walked to the window, and peered through a crack in the curtains, coveting the dry, cracked earth outside. Just then, an unidentified object suddenly fell, shaking the ground with a thud and making the doors and windows roar. A few screams rang out from outside. I looked closely and saw that an entire wall section of a sunroom had collapsed. A woman was lying on top of it, blood slowly seeping from under her hair. I don't know if it was the rain or the scorching heat of the past few days, but the walls of the high-rise sunrooms had all started to crack. Perhaps some cracks were obvious, while others were hidden within the structure. I hurriedly checked my own apartment from top to bottom 3 times. For the time being, I found no cracks. That night, many more families drove away. The woman's body on the collapsed wall was also taken away, leaving only a dark, oxidized bloodstain behind. A few hours later, another accident occurred. The walls of 3 more apartments collapsed. Fortunately, no one else died. But for the next few nights, people continued to leave every day. I don't know how many people are left in the building. It's deathly quiet day and night. Ding dong! A friend request suddenly popped up. It showed that the person had sent the request via people you may know nearby. Hello, I'm the resident of 208. Are you still living in the apartment? I'm out of water at my place. Can I trade you some food for a bottle of water? 208. My apartment number is 408. That means this person was likely living 2 floors below me. I was always careful when I walked, and I hadn't moved my tables or chairs at all. With a whole floor between us, he probably didn't know there was someone in 408. I didn't reply to him. A moment later, he sent another message, this time with a picture of a pile of snacks that made my mouth water: crab-flavored rice crackers, braised chicken legs, potato chips, fries, spicy strips, sausages, and more. I couldn't help but reply. Without any established trust, how can I feel safe trading with you? The person seemed to be waiting by his phone as the message came back instantly. You can leave the items out and then I'll go get them. I refused. It's too dangerous outside. Sorry. I ignored all the messages that followed. 5 minutes later, the person finally gave up. I went to the bathroom, then used the post-metabolism watermelon juice to water the flowering watermelon vines. After making sure each one got a fair share, I scrolled to a local news outlet's job posting. The content was roughly, due to the overcrowding in the public shelters and a severe lack of resources, those who wish to receive more supplies must contribute labor. Seeing this, I thought, if things go as expected, David is about to get busy. This time, I didn't have to wait long. Jessica posted an update. I watched the video of the man, my father, tilting his head back to drink water, and my nose suddenly tingled. He was holding a full bottle of water but didn't dare to drink directly from the opening. He carefully wet his throat, then smiled and handed the water to the person filming. In the video, his skin was dark and his body was so thin that his skin hung loosely. The cheekbones on his face protruded sharply. His lips were pale, the area under his eyes was bluish, and to put it bluntly, he looked like he wasn't far from death. I thought about it all night. In the middle of the night, I unblocked him and sent him a single sentence. Take care of yourself. That mother and daughter aren't worth you sacrificing your life for. Not long after I sent the message and fell asleep, the sound of a reply woke me up. After spending so much time alone, I'd become sensitive to any sound. David's reply left me feeling helpless. Don't be like your mother, always assuming the worst of people. They have more conscience than you do. I worked hard all day yesterday, and they knew to give the first sip of water to me. The water you earned through hard work, why do you call it giving? They're relying on you to drink that water. Of course they have to flatter you. Once they've squeezed you dry, do you believe they'll Immediately find someone else? If I die, I can't control what happens after. As long as I'm alive, having someone by my side to care for me is enough. Your wings have grown strong, and I can't control you anymore. After raising you for over 20 years, I've raised an ungrateful wolf. I truly regret not listening to my family and sending you away. My vision suddenly blurred. I wiped my tears away and told him, "Take care." 3 days later, Jessica's social media post brought the news of his death. He died on the 20th day of the apocalypse. He lived 17 days longer than I did in my last life. I was officially an orphan with no parents. That day, I stared at the watermelon vines that crawled all over the room, sitting motionless for a long, long time. It was a knock on the door that pulled me out of my daze. Knock, knock, knock. I hugged myself tightly, my body trembling uncontrollably. I've heard that peepholes are two-way. When the person inside looks out, the person outside can also see if someone is peeking. The thought filled my mind with the terrifying image of a black eyeball hiding behind the peephole. I know someone's in there. This building smells of instant noodles every day. I've ruled out all the other rooms, only yours is left. Are you going to come out on your own or wait for me to break the door down? Breathing became exceptionally difficult. I didn't even dare to swallow, afraid the person outside could hear. The person outside really started to smash the door. Every blow sent a shiver through my body. It felt like a crack had appeared in the door. He was about to get in. My hands were shaking violently. My heart felt like it was about to leap out of my throat. To live, to protect my melon patch, I forced myself to crawl onto the table, grabbed the fruit knife, and held it tightly in my hand. Bang! The lock, which had been tortured for ages, finally gave way, breaking from the door frame with its parts scattering all over the floor. I was pressed right against the door. When the dark figure appeared, my mind went blank, completely losing the ability to think. I could only let my body hysterically repeat the motion of swinging the knife. Once, twice, 3 times. I don't know how many times I stabbed. The dark figure cursed, kicked me to the ground, and raised a machete high, about to bring it down. I closed my eyes. In my mind, I subconsciously started calculating how many more days I had lived in this life compared to the last. Was being reborn even worth it? Ah! At some point, a taller, dark figure suddenly rushed in from outside, knocking away the person who was about to kill me. He then snatched the knife and killed the attacker. It all happened too fast, too suddenly. The second dark figure slowly squatted down, picked up an arm from the first man, cut it open, and began to suck the blood with a tisk-tisk sound. He eats people. I wanted to run, but my body felt like it was under sleep paralysis. My mind was crystal clear, but I was unable to move an inch. I watched helplessly as the man drank his fill of blood and then looked up towards me. He stood up again, reached out, and patted my face. Seeming to sense something was wrong, he pressed his hand directly on my chest. What the hell? It's a girl! With a click, the room's light turned on, and my eyes, stung by the sudden brightness, couldn't open. I turned my head and came face to face with the dead man who had broken in. He died with his eyes wide open, still looking a bit stunned. I instantly felt a heavy stone pressing on my chest, making it hard to breathe. My ear, pressed against the floor, clearly transmitted the sound of forceful footsteps to my brain. They were getting closer. Suddenly, my shoulder was patted. "Where are you hurt? Can you get up?" My body seemed to be able to move again. "You're that timid resident who ignored me, right? You've got some skills, growing so many watermelons. That's great." After speaking, he walked into my field of vision, easily grabbed the corpse on the floor, and dragged it to the door. Before leaving, he didn't forget to tell me, "You clean up the floor. I'll be back later to eat watermelon." After he left, I immediately stood up and frantically started cleaning the bloodstains. The thick metallic smell was nauseating. Before I could finish cleaning, the man returned. He casually strolled through my melon patch, picking out watermelons. After walking around for a few laps, he finally found 2 relatively large ones. He broke them open with his hands and then buried his head in them, devouring them like a madman. Later, he told me his name was Mark, and that he only drank blood because he was extremely thirsty, not because he was some kind of pervert. On the 39th day of the apocalypse, the four public shelters in the city simultaneously announced that their resources were depleted and their management was disbanded. As the 670,000 residents inside all faced a severe water shortage, my watermelons welcomed their fourth harvest. Mark said that the high-temperature apocalypse would end in a few months, and it was time to plan for the future. We could use this batch of watermelons to earn fame and fortune. You'll be in charge of growing, I'll be in charge of sales. I silently nodded. I had no choice. I couldn't beat him in a fight. Mark had a car. After I helped him load the watermelons into it, he closed the trunk and suddenly patted my head. Just you wait, our salvation melons are about to save the world. I woodenly dodged his hand and told him, my hair is dirty. I haven't washed it in 40 days. Mark burst out laughing. Then why don't you just shave your head like me? I hesitated for a moment, then agreed. He, on the other hand, was taken aback, then sighed. I have clippers at my place. I'll shave it for you when I get back. Before dawn, a sliver of white appeared on the horizon. Mark drove back. I waited in the room with a knife. It's me, he announced from the hallway before coming in. I breathed a sigh of relief and walked with him to the table. The backpack made a muffled thud when he placed it on the table, seeming very heavy. Is your name Anna? Mark suddenly asked. I was stunned for a moment. Yes. Did you tell people I'm your boyfriend? He asked again. I shook my head vigorously. No, absolutely not. The smile on Mark's face faded. I went to the nearest shelter, Shelter 2, last night. After the management there disbanded, the people inside basically didn't leave. The watermelons sold out as soon as they arrived. I'm not going back to Shelter 2 next time. First, some crazy woman was calling me brother-in-law, begging me to save her and take her with me. Then, after I sold the melons, a gang of people targeted me. Otherwise, I would have been back around 1. I lowered my head, thinking, Jessica must have been reborn too. She probably saw me use the space ring to hoard supplies in her last life. But how could I have ended up with Mark, this blood-sucking guy? What are you thinking about? Come take a look at our hard-earned money as melon farmers. Mark opened his backpack. Inside was a pile of glittering gold and some expensive watches. As a broke person, I was indeed a bit excited to see so much gold. We still don't know when the apocalypse will end. An astronomer friend of mine predicts it will end around November of this year. It's not far off. Then, when you sell these later, people will be able to trace them. What if they report you to the police and have you arrested? You don't need to worry about that. I didn't steal or rob. I earned this with my own skills. It's much more law-abiding than those looters. I couldn't win an argument with him, so I chose to continue tending to my little watermelons. There are still several months until the end of the apocalypse. This time, I must survive. On the 43rd day, Jessica contacted me with a new post. The picture was of David's bones. She wanted to make a trade. If you don't want your own father's remains to be scattered, tell your husband to bring me water and food. I found it laughable. Didn't David say he didn't care about what happened after he died? His stepdaughter, to whom he gave money when she asked and love when she wanted, was now using his bones to bargain with me. I wondered what his expression would be in the afterlife if he knew. I didn't have time to waste on her. Mark had brought a lot more soil into the other apartments. Now, all the rooms on the 4th floor had been turned into melon patches, and I was swamped. The main problem was that there was simply not enough water for irrigation. On the 49th day, the melons in rooms 408 and 409 were ripe. Mark drove them to Base 3 to sell, and he came back earlier this time. The people at Base 3 are very smart. I'm wary of smart people. Next time, I'll go to Base 1. The melons in room 411 and the rooms after that all withered and died due to lack of water. On the 53rd day, this batch of melons was almost sold out. The remaining small watermelons would barely last us until the next batch ripened. Mark said, "The walls of the building are cracking. We won't sell this next batch of ripe watermelons. We're moving to the nearby mountains to live." The mountains he mentioned were a scenic spot I had visited before the apocalypse. Back then, the entire mountain was lush and green. Now it was a stretch of scorched yellow. We found a ranger station on the shady side of a mountain to live in and started planting melons again. The temperature in the mountains was slightly lower than in the city, and my body seemed to have gradually adapted to the high heat over the past 2 months. When the temperature dropped at night, I surprisingly didn't feel hot. On the 64th day, the melons were ripe. The yield was slightly low, so we kept them for ourselves. Mark fiddled with his equipment and found 2 public shelters in the next city. He planned to go there to sell melons next time. On the 74th day, the melons ripened one after another. After setting aside enough for the two of us to eat, the remaining small watermelons filled Mark's car. He left at 8 in the evening and hadn't returned even after the sun had fully risen. I thought he probably wasn't coming back and felt quite down. Sadly, I took out some instant noodles from my storage space and made 2 packs with my precious drinking water. These past few days, with Mark always around, I didn't dare to reveal the existence of my storage space and could only eat melons with him to get by. After eating, I felt much better. 2 nights later, I woke up to find a man lying next to me, which scared me so much I slammed my head against the wall. The man opened his bloodshot eyes, glanced at me, and then closed them again. I'm going to sleep a little longer. He had been ambushed while selling melons at the shelter in the next city. His car was left there, and he had to walk all the way back on his own 2 feet. I advised him, people's hearts are treacherous. It's better to just safely ride out the apocalypse. Mark said, actually, my intention was to save more people, to spread the watermelon seeds and let more people survive. I looked at the several large bags of valuables in the corner. On the 100th day of the apocalypse, the daytime temperature had noticeably dropped. Before 9 a.m., the outdoor temperature was still bearable. Mark marked a date for our escape. People won't wait until the temperature is completely normal to start moving. I'll take you back to my hometown to lay low for a while. His hometown was in the neighboring province. On the 121st day, when the daytime temperature dropped to the 120s, we began our move. Mark had found a car in advance, but unfortunately it didn't have much gas. Along the way, we had to dismantle cars we found and scavenge gas stations, piecing together enough fuel to get to his home. The house hadn't collapsed, and there was no one home. Mark hid the backpacks one by one, then told me about his family situation. My parents aren't dead. They spend all their time on research. You can stay here without worry. I nodded lightly. Once the high temperatures officially end, I'll leave. Hearing this, his eyes widened immediately. You can't do that. Just use me and then walk away? I gave him a puzzled look. Do you know why I never mentioned splitting the profits? What is he planning to do? Kill me after the job is done to tie up loose ends? Because I won't let you leave me. This is our marital property. If you want it, I can give it all to you. His smile was eerie, and his intense stare once again reminded me of him drinking blood. If I disagreed, I might get dismembered. In mid-November, the daytime temperature dropped to 93 degrees. Countries around the world declared the end of the high-temperature climate, and life began to return to normal everywhere. On the first day the government offices opened, Mark dragged me to get a marriage license. After leaving the office, he immediately asked me, "Where do you want to settle down?" I said, "Somewhere with mountains and water." So, we bought a villa with land for planting back in the city. Mark worked from home, responsible for transferring the valuables we had earned into a bank card. Then he told me, "I'm not going to work anymore. You can support me with the interest." I didn't really want to see him every day, so I contacted my previous university to continue my studies. Mark didn't object. He even proactively rented an apartment near the school to be with me while I studied. This guy was determined to stick to me. Epilogue. January 23rd is the anniversary of my mother's death. When I went home to pay my respects at her grave, I also stopped by David's old neighborhood to take a look. Half of the hazardous buildings had collapsed, but people were still living there. I asked someone about Jessica and her mother. The person pointed to a lump in the barren flower bed. "See, that's the mad woman. Her dad died, and her mom left with another man." With nowhere else to go, she followed the rest of us back to the neighborhood. When she's awake, she digs holes in the flower bed. When she's tired, she sleeps in the holes. I had just passed by there, and I didn't even recognize her.